All right, this is jpeg2RAW, show number 60. I cannot believe we're up to show number 60 already. It won't be long before we'll be saying show number 100. But this is show number 60 on October 23rd, 2012. And tonight's topic is Lightroom, which we'll be going over in a little bit. But before we do, I wanted to mention that jpeg2RAW is a weekly photography podcast that we put out live on our website, jpeg2RAW, every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern. We also record the show and make it available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, YouTube, and many other locations. Stitcher Radio, if you don't know about that one is audio only. iTunes is audio and 2 video feeds, and then YouTube, of course, is video only. It has audio, but whatever. I use Beyond Pod on my phone and get the show that way. Also, I don't know if you know this, but I get it on my TiVo. I get it if you have to do the URL. You have to type in the whole RSS. But I have it on my TiVo. And funny thing is, I came downstairs one night and my wife was watching it on the TiVo.
No way.
She was watching. She was watching a show where we had Ben Canales.
Oh yeah.
On the star photographer. She was watching that one.
That was awesome. That was a good show.
Yeah, we also have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. Just search for jpeg2RAW, and you'll find the page in the group. The group has really expanded. Last week when we had Rachel on, it really grew that week, and it had been growing pretty good before that too. But we're getting close to 600 members now in the group.
That's awesome. Which
is really growing. And this month's, we have a monthly photo contest. This month's topic is black and white, chosen by the previous month's winner, and we're getting a lot of people entering that contest. And if you don't know, you have to be a member of the Facebook group to join you have to be a member of the Facebook group to enter the contest. And then the contest is open till the end of the month. We hold it about a week after that for people to vote by liking the photo. And then the 3 photos with the most likes will be pulled out of that, and the admins, which is Tim, Kathleen, Gina Perry, and I will review those and pick a winner out of those 3. The winner will become the photo on the top of the Facebook page. We'll also receive a $25 credit from Stacy Jensen, who was on a show prior and also has written several articles for the show. Mm-hmm. So a $25 credit for that, and then all 3 photos are displayed on the show after the winner is announced. The winner is announced on the show. All 3 is displayed on there, and all 3 is added into the show notes with links back to whatever site they want to, their Facebook page, their website, their Flickr page, whatever they want. That's reasonable. I also like to thank one more thing on that. So you remember a couple weeks ago we had Michael Clark on, right?
Right.
And let me see if I can do this right. We had Michael Clark on, and he said, hey, I will donate one of my books.
Oh,
remember
yeah.
that? So here's what I'm thinking. I haven't worked out the details yet, but what I'm thinking is the book that he is going to donate, I think it's this one called Exposed.
So cool. Such a great, I want it.
Well, yeah. So
I know. Can't have it.
We'll give the winner of the October contest. This is what I'm thinking. Don't hold me to this yet, but this is what I'm thinking. The winner of the October contest, that book, and the winner of the the November contest, whatever that's going to be. Previous winner gets to choose that topic. The winner of that contest also get a book that the show will buy. Then we'll mail both of those books out to Michael, plus one of the ones I'm going to buy for me personally, and maybe some other limited people. If you want to get one signed by Michael, let me know. We may do a few limited ones. I'll mail those out to Michael. He'll sign them personal for whoever it is. Then he'll mail them back to us, and then I'll mail them out to the winners.
Awesome. That's so cool.
And with the goal of trying to get all that done and to the winner by Christmas.
Okay.
To have a signed copy. So think about doing that for the October and November winners.
You guys want to win that one. That's a good one.
And talking about how the show gets money to buy that kind of stuff is through our Adorama and our Amazon links. We've had a lot of people who are recently using those links, and now, even though the contest is still going on for this Intuos Wacom tablet and this thing that I bought too many of through the end of October, we have enough funds already to do the next giveaway. So we're going to be holding the vote, and the vote is done by the members of the Facebook group. that is going to be probably decided between a Spider 4 monocalibrator and an Expo disc. We'll let them decide.
Awesome. It's exciting.
All right. Morgan, are you working yet, or do we need to keep going? I think we need to keep going. Rachel says Expo disc out in chat. So we let the members of the Facebook group decide. We'll hold a vote soon on which one that should be, and then whoever doesn't win will probably be tossed into the next one. Did I mention? Oh, I want to thank Seth White for coming out the last 2 weeks to help out. That was a big help. Yeah,
big time help.
And hopefully we'll get Morgan to come on in a little bit to talk about her charity. Morgan was last on the show number 20. She's been on twice. Show number 20 and show number 12.
And almost on show number 60.
And well, we can keep going, and if she gets it done, we can stop at any point and let her come in and do this. She has a really, really good charity that we really would like to get out there. So we'll let her come in whenever she can. But I think it's time to hit the main topic.
All right, let's do it.
Which means Kathleen's on. So before can I say one thing before we do?
Yeah.
So we tease Kathleen a lot about Mac versus PC, Sony versus Nikon versus Canon, and all that kind of stuff, and how Kathleen's wrong in every case. But we're joking, it's good that we have a wide diversity. But one of the things we joked with Kathleen about is, or not joked, but talked about, was using Lightroom. Mm-hmm. And to Kathleen's credit, she's great at Photoshop, but she also wanted to learn more about Lightroom. And you spent a lot of time working with Lightroom and developing your own style and method, and that's kind of what you're going to be going over tonight, right?
Yeah, I was hardcore Photoshop for, the 13 years that I've been doing photography, and I kept hearing, the rumors that Lightroom just kind of makes things faster. And with me being a stay-at-home mom that's also trying to run a business, time is of the essence. And so I knew that the initial diving in to learn Lightroom was going to be a huge learning curve, and that was going to take a lot of time. But I was very hopeful that after learning it, that it would really save me time. And I've been using it now for a few months, and it's so much faster than Photoshop for me. And there are some photo shoots that I can go through and do everything in Lightroom, and I never have to open up Photoshop. And then every once in a while I will have a photo shoot with, maybe a senior that has acne that's super bad. And so then I'll want to pull that into Photoshop, just simply because they're blemish control in Photoshop is a little bit more intuitive. But I am really loving Lightroom, and it's one of those things that now that I love it so much, I'm like screaming it from the rooftops to all of my photography friends, because I can cull and edit a photo shoot in such faster time than I used to be able to, and it's really freed me up. So I love Lightroom.
Yeah, and are you using the P and X shortcuts?
Definitely.
Are you going to go over that later?
I didn't really put that in my notes, but we can certainly start there.
Well, this is kind of, you probably have a script. I don't want to get in the way of your script. So you go your route. And
okay. Well, I'd love to be able to go over, every module in Lightroom at some point, but I thought I'd start in the Develop module today. It might seem a little bit backwards, but I feel like that's what gets people hung up on really using Lightroom or just using it to cull images. And so for the longest time, I used to use Lightroom just to cull my images, just X and P, just to cull my images, and then I would export everything into Photoshop. And I've spent quite a bit of money trying to find programs that would help me get my images to Photoshop and back quicker. If I would have just spent the time in Lightroom to begin with, I could have saved myself a lot of money. So I'm going to do a screen share here for you guys, so when I'm walking through everything, you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. And if Morgan comes in at any point in time, you guys just stop me, and I'll stop right where I am, and we'll pick back up. Okay, let's see.
I think Morgan and Rachel are trying to work something out.
Oh, good. I hope
that great,
works
you got
out.
Me.
Oh, there's Mike. Okay, I'm pulling up my phone so we won't see you anymore. Okay, so one of the great things about Lightroom is that it never changes your pixels of your photograph files. When you're editing a photograph, Lightroom will continually store your edit instructions in a metadata file of the photograph. And so when you export your photograph, Lightroom renders the exported version of that photograph. So the pixels in the exported version are changed, but the pixels of your original photograph are not changed. And that's really huge, because back in my Photoshop days, I always had to remember to do a save as versus just a save. And there were so many times that I would hit save on an image and then just ruin my original file. And you know, with time, editing tastes change. I know that through my career, I've gone through different styles of editing, and there's a lot of images that I love the inherent image, but I hate the edit on it. And now I can't change it because I've, you know, wrecked the original file. So that's really nice about Lightroom, is that you're never messing with your original file. We're going to be talking about the Develop module. Can you guys see my mouse?
No.
Okay, can you see it? It's hovering up here over the Develop module.
Yep,
Yeah.
Actually, now I see it.
Okay, good. I'll try and tell you exactly where I am so you guys can follow it. I should have figured out a way to highlight my mouse, but maybe next time I'll have that set up. So we're going to be talking about all the things in the Develop module. And the first thing is basically, you know, they have it set up from top to bottom, and that's really the best way to use it, is just go from the top to the bottom. We're going to start up here with white balance, and I picked this image of little Isla because it's obviously got a really bad blue cast to it, and there's a couple ways that you can adjust your white balance. One of the ways is you have this eyedropper tool right here, and you can hover over your picture and you're looking for a neutral point in your photograph. You're looking for the part in your photograph actually that has the least amount of color. And the area doesn't have to be perfectly gray, but you know, getting it as close to gray as possible is the best. And one great way to know if you're close is you have this little loop. Basically, it says pick a target neutral, and it zooms in on the image that your eyedropper is pointing at. And on the bottom there, it has the RGB values. When you find a spot on your image where the RGB values are very close to the same number, then you know you've hit a pretty good gray spot. So for example, this one is R is 80.2, G is 81.1, and B is 89.1. Sometimes you can get closer than that. Sometimes that's about as close as you're going to get, but that gives you a good idea. And then you just click on it, and it will automatically adjust your image to those values. Here you can see it really pushed my image up to 7,750, which is really high. For some reason, it's not rendering the image yet. That's maybe because I'm online. But you can always change and get more specific within your temperature and your tint. Can you see where my cursor is right now?
No, I don't see it.
You guys are breaking up for me. Why am I losing you?
Tim, can you hear us?
Sorry, I had it on mute. I was typing. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm gonna check in on you guys every once in a while to make sure you're still there.
I can see your mouse. Yeah.
Okay, good. So as you can see, it really warmed up the image. That's a little bit more to my liking. So I can come over here to the sliders, and obviously the temperature runs from blue to yellow, which is going to warm it, and your tint runs from.
Well,
now she's really quiet.
that settled that. Like, looks like it's a Mac problem.
I can't remember the last time we had technical difficulties.
Yeah, you know what? We start saying that, and all of a sudden we're going to crash. It looks like it's so. While we're waiting for her, and Morgan's joining. If Morgan doesn't, if it doesn't work out with her, we can always try Skype at the end of the show. So. I don't know if Morgan can hear us. If not, you know, Morgan, I don't know what her timing is. Maybe, hopefully she can hang out toward the end of the show, and then we'll just try it through. We'll try it through Skype.
Yeah, it's Google.
Whoa, we're hearing you good now. Oh no, she just left. We heard her good there.
It's just Google Plus.
And Lightroom is a resource hog.
That might be what it is.
You know, here. So while we're waiting for Kathleen, I would say
realize she's not here?
I would say Mac or PC, it doesn't matter. I would say, you know, minimum amount of RAM you should get these days is 8 gig. That means you got to go with a 64-bit operating system. But I would say you know, if you're going to be doing Photoshop and Lightroom and all these other things, you know, you probably should be thinking more in the lines of 16 gig. RAM is so super cheap these days. Do not cut yourself short on that. Now I don't know what Kathleen has. You know, that may not be her issue. I have 16 gig in this one, and I feel like I'm always cutting too close.
I put 32 in my latest build.
Wow, that's nice. So you got to get a motherboard that can handle it.
Yep, I maxed it out.
Yeah, my next computer I'm going to build is going to definitely have 32 gig. So I would say 8 is the absolute bare minimum. You should be looking better for 16 gig. Mac or PC, doesn't matter. And then really, there's no reason to buy a new computer these days. It does not have an SSD for the operating system or hard drive. I would not buy a new PC these days without an SSD for the hard drive.
I agree.
And if you're going to buy a laptop, you know,
same thing.
Same thing. I would make sure it has an SSD. So Kathleen, hopefully she knows she's cut.
She's still talking.
hopefully she knows she's cut. And whatever we can.
Worst part is she's not typing in the other. Oh, I know. All right, she knows.
Well, if we had enough time, maybe we could try and do Skype with
Morgan.
Although I think that we would have, in order to get Skype to work, here's the reason I didn't want to do it during the show, is we would have to stop this Hangout, go out to Skype, and then start back up a Hangout.
I can't remember the last time I used Skype anymore.
Yeah, and Kathleen's coming back in.
Hey.
So. Hey.
Hey. Crazy. Okay. So what are we doing right now? Are we going back?
I don't know. Are you able to screen share? Because right now we only have a static picture.
Yeah, we don't
awesome.
have your.
Let's try. Okay, let's see.
And it looks like a wedding dress on a beach.
That's me. All right, can you see my screen now?
Oh wait, and Rachel, you're saying that Morgan can't Skype? Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay.
Before you get started, I just need to clear something up. Rachel, are you saying that Morgan can't Skype either? Because obviously that won't do us any good. There's no reason to try that. No, she said for an admin to go in place of her. Oh, okay. Is there someone who's here tonight who wants to jump in for her? They'll need to be on Google Plus. Okay, while they're thinking about that, you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay. I'm not sure where I left off. Was it when I started talking about the tone?
Yeah.
Okay. So your tone values are your exposure and your contrast mainly. This image normally was a little bit too bright for me, so I just brought the tone down a little bit. And I wanted to make sure everybody knew that whenever you make an adjustment in any of the sections, you can go back to your original a couple of different ways. You can double click on the word tone, and that will bring everything in the tone box back to the 0 value. You can double click. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so what you're saying is it's a little small here for what people can see, but if you use Lightroom, you kind of know where she's talking about. Mm-hmm. In that adjustment panel on the tone, you've made all kind of tone adjustments, but you want to start all over again. Go back to a blank setting. You just double click on the word tone,
mm-hmm.
and
it'll take everything back to 0.
And I also think on individual lines, you can double click on the word and it will take that one line back to 0.
So like right now, I've only adjusted the exposure, but let's say that I've done a ton of work in that tone section and I only want to mess with the exposure. I can double click exposure and it will set it back to 0. You can also double click on the slider itself and it will go back to 0. So you can try messing around with that. Okay, so let me see. Let's talk about the contrast. That's pretty obvious. Now, The contrast slider does put an S curve around the midpoint of your tones. So where the exposure slider is going to be a linear change, it's going to affect the entire photograph. Your contrast slider is not a linear adjustment. It's not going to adjust your pixels evenly. It's a personal preference for people like to have their contrast. It depends on the look you're going for. I tend to hover somewhere around 10, plus 10 or plus 20. Now, when you're in the tone section, you also have the options to adjust your highlights, your shadows, your whites, and your blacks. Most of the time in Lightroom, I go from the top of the Develop module to the bottom. There are a few circumstances where I kind of mix things up a little bit to get the look that I want, and this is one of those cases. I'm going to jump down here and explain whites and blacks for you. The whites and blacks reminds me of a levels adjustment in Photoshop. Have you used that before
Yep.
in Photoshop? Okay. So basically when you're doing a levels adjustment in Photoshop, it shows you your histogram, and then you can drag the sliders in from the left and from the right. So you're not clipping any of your blacks or any of your whites, but you're adding a lot of definition to your image. This basically is the same thing. So if I move my blacks either to the left or to the right, I'm basically adjusting the levels of my blacks, and same thing with my whites, you know, to the left or to the right. And the great thing about Lightroom is that if you hold down the Option key, what is it on a PC, Mike?
The control key.
The control key. Okay, so Option on a Mac or Control on a PC. If I hold it down and then grab my slider, then it whites out my screen, and as I move it to the left, I'm on my blacks right now, it will start to show me where I'm clipping my blacks. So clipping is either overexposure or underexposure of a photograph, and you don't really want to clip things too badly. My blacks, I tend to allow a little bit of clipping because I think it adds some depth and some definition. When I go up to my whites, I really don't want any clipping. See right there where you're seeing the blue on my screen, it's starting to clip my whites. I don't really want any clipping because then it starts to get rid of definition within my whites. Now, there are times with your whites that clipping probably wouldn't be bad. For example, if you took a photograph and you intentionally blew out your skies, then obviously when you're dragging your whites up, your skies are going to be blown out, and you knew that to begin with because you did that intentionally. Okay, so after I have my black point set and my white point set where I like it, and I do it based off of where the clipping goes, like I don't allow my image to be clipped, then I can come up here to my shadows and highlights. I'm going to switch to another picture real quick to show you this in more detail. Okay, so on this picture, it's taking a second to load, sorry.
Okay.
My computer's working hard, I guess, right now. I got to get some images off my hard drive, and I still haven't ordered my backup storage.
Oh, good gosh. You're
I
living
know.
dangerously.
Very dangerously. I do not like it. Okay, so on this image, I've already adjusted my black point, and I've adjusted my white point for you guys to see. But if you hit the J button on your keyboard, it will show you where you have clipping in your shadows and your highlights. I'm going to do this drastically so you guys can see what I'm talking about, okay? So the red is going to show you where you've clipped your highlights, and the blue is going to show you where you've clipped your shadows.
Yeah, I use that all the time. I love that. And somebody asked, they have blacks, not whites, and I think that Lightroom 4 blew those up a little bit more. You have a few more choices. If you have Lightroom 3, you have blacks, and I think whites are called highlights.
Shadows and highlights, I think.
Yeah. But you also have blacks, I think, in Lightroom 3.
Right. I forgot already.
Okay. I'm sorry, Kathleen. Keep going. Uh-oh. Maybe a good time for Kathleen to rejoin us again.
Here we go again.
And also a good time for Melissa. I sent Melissa an invite so she can come in place of Morgan.
Okay,
Melissa,
cool. Is she
hopefully you
coming
got.
on right now?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep going, and you guys let me know.
Well, you got to share your
There's no way
screen
to
again.
find the invite.
I'm working on it. Sharing my screen. Working on it.
You know what I need to do is come over there and build you a real computer, Kathleen.
Let's just go ahead and do that. As long as you don't charge me anything, I'd be fine with
Well,
that.
you'd have to buy the hardware. I'm not going to donate the hardware.
Okay, hold on. I grabbed the wrong screen share. Let's try this again. Okay, there we go.
There I am.
There's Tim. Okay, so as you can see, this image, because I've got it moved all around crazy here in my tone section, we've got a lot of blown highlights and we've got a lot of clipped shadows. So after you set your white and your black point, go ahead and hit that J key on your keyboard, and then you can bring back in your shadows, and you can also save a bunch of your highlights. Now,
You say J key? What
Yeah.
is that?
J, hit J.
And what does that do?
That will show you where you have clipping
Okay.
for your highlights or your shadows. Okay, so all that to say, you will have a lot more flexibility with what you can save if you're shooting in RAW. If you're shooting in JPEG, you're not going to be able to save as much. You'll still be able to save some, but not nearly as much. Okay, let me think. What do I got next? We talked about clipping. We talked about contrast a little bit, about it, how it applies the S-curve. We're good there. We talked about the whites and the blacks, highlights and the shadows. Are you guys following me so far?
Yep.
Okay, I want to show you another picture when it comes to shadows. I'm going to show you this picture right here. Your shadows adjustment is going to allow you to obtain that hazy effect that sometimes we want creatively in our images. Let's see, I have let's see, okay, I'm going to a different snapshot of the image because this was my final edit. Okay, so your shadow slider takes your underexposed shadows, like we said, and makes them brighter. But it does this without lightening the darkest blacks in your image. So as you can see this picture, if I just did a clean edit on it, this is what it would look like. But if I want to give more of a hazy effect, it's a combination of things that we're going to use, and we're going to go through all of them by the end of this tutorial. But one of the things that you're going to use is, instead of, I'm hitting my J key to see if we have any shadows that are clipped. Over here in the little edge of this picture, there's a tiny bit which I would never worry about. But if you're going to use the shadows slider to create a hazy effect, then you're going to exaggerate how much of the shadows you're going to save. So I would bring it way up, and if you look in the back, it's really lightening my shadows back there. Can you guys see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. So that's one of the ways that we're going to start to create that hazy effect that sometimes we want in our images. Let's talk about clarity next. Now, clarity technically increases or decreases your contrast within your midtones. The contrast change is due to sharpening. So in practice, you can think of clarity as increasing or decreasing the emphasis of your picture. Sometimes it's a wanted change. Like in this image, if I increased my clarity, it probably would show up mainly in his eyes. Let's go ahead and increase that clarity. It might be hard to see on your screens at home because I know I'm not zooming in enough. So this is one of those things that you're just going to have to play with. I'm going to exaggerate it for you and bring it all the way up. But you see how dark the edges of contrast in the midtones get? So you're never going to want to pump it up to 100. I don't know, maybe on landscape it probably wouldn't hurt so bad if that was an effect you're going for. But with portraits, you need to be careful with this slider. I tend to use it both ways. It depends on the picture. So with this picture, I'd be fine with bumping the clarity up to 10. But if you have a picture like this one, for example, of a newborn, then the last thing you want to be doing is adding contrast within the midtones because their skin is so soft, and when you're, when you're editing a newborn picture, you want to keep the image, keep the skin tones and everything looking soft.
Hold on,
So
Kathleen.
a lot of times you can decrease the clarity to accentuate that softness. So here's a picture of a newborn, and as soon as it lets me, I'm going to zoom in. You guys
Kathleen,
got somebody?
can you hold on for a second?
Yeah.
Hey Melissa, can you mute the show if you're watching a show? Make sure you mute that so we don't get the feedback.
Or put a mute on your microphone at least.
Well, we're ready to go
Otherwise she
to
won't
her.
be able to hear us.
Well, don't mute yourself. We wanted to actually talk to you.
Oh
Or we're-
Lord, I'm such a.
When you're looking at it on a live page, just mute that, and that should stop the feedback.
Just mute the microphone, right?
Yeah.
On the live show, right above the chat, there's a little speaker.
Kathleen, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just stopped doing screen share for right now.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm still here. I just stopped doing screen share for right now.
Do you see that button, Melissa?
I see lots of buttons.
Right underneath the video on the live page, there's a little mute button.
Oh. Okay, hold on.
Oh, did you just get it? Did you just get it?
I did.
Okay. All right. So what we've been trying to do, and thank you for jumping in for not for Rachel, for Morgan, who's having some bandwidth issues tonight, is Morgan and some other people have started a wonderful charity, and you know, cancer is something that is horrible for anybody who has got it, and anybody who has a loved one who's had it. But I think the absolute worst kind is anything that affects a child. And you're going to give us a little bit of background and how people can help out with y'all's charity, right, Melissa?
I am. This is really Morgan's brainchild, and it was inspired by Ava and her family. We've named it the Gold Hope Project in honor of gold is the color that they chose to represent pediatric cancer, and so that's the color that we went with for the name of the project. And basically, we've all been given a gift of photography, and we really think that it's important to pass that along to these families that they have so much going on with their child fighting cancer that it's probably the front of their minds, but eventually they're going to want these memories, you know. I mean, we all pray that the child will pull through it, but you know, sometimes unfortunately it doesn't happen that way, and
Right.
so we want to give them something that they might not otherwise get.
And you know, the website is goldhope.weebly.com, right?
Yes.
And you go
Yes.
there, and you're seeing the website right now as we're talking about it. But there's also a video there that if you watch, I'm not going to play it right now, but if you watch that very touching video that you should watch if you go to the website. What are you looking for people to help? How can people help?
Right now, we're looking for photographers. We have over 100, I think, at this point, that have already signed up, and that is both across the United States. We also have a photographer in the United Kingdom and one in Scotland, and you can go right on the website. There's a form to fill out if you're interested. We do a portfolio review. We ask that you be consistent and also have a good portfolio that includes children. We're also looking for vendors who might be able to make gold props for sessions. Each session that we do incorporates the gold theme into it to keep it kind of consistent across the board.
Yeah. And I'm scrolling down the number of people that you have in all the different states. It is amazing. You've got, hey, you got some people in my hometown, not the town I live in right now. That's awesome. But you got a lot of the states and a lot of photographers a lot of photographers involved in this. So, how many? Do you know how many you have so far? How many photographers?
Honestly, I have lost count, but I know it's over 100.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it's over.
Got,
It definitely looks like it's over 100.
Alicia, how many did we get in today?
154 photographers. Awesome. That is
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah,
So
and that's
cool.
since we're a month and a half old. We started in September.
Wow, that's lightning fast. That's great.
That is lightning fast. I'm still scrolling. You're getting 100, 150 a week. I don't know if I'm gonna make it to the end of this list. But you're still looking for more, right?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
as long as this list is, unfortunately, there's a long list of people who need this service too, I imagine,
Right.
who could benefit from this service.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
how
the
do you
unfortunate
how do you find the families?
We have coordinators for each state. Some states like Texas, California, they have more than one, and they've been contacting hospitals, specifically cancer treatment centers in their state, and just going from there. I know a lot of people have been doing. Sometimes my words fail me. A lot of people have been doing like Morgan and some other folks did the Walk for the Cure, and they have passed out literature. Amber, I believe, just did a booth. Help me out here.
You just did a booth. And
Yeah.
what I see from the front page is I imagine this girl is just going through things that no person should have to go through, but especially a child. But she still looks full of life. She just looks like she's absolutely happy, and it's a wonderful thing to capture that happiness of the child.
Yeah.
I wish Morgan had worked out because she has gotten to meet Ava and her family. I have not, but I've been just profoundly touched by their fight and Ava's strength and beauty. I lost a friend in high school to cancer, and so I know it's not an easy thing. I watched him beat it, and then I watched it come back, and he just was not strong enough.
Well, I'd imagine that just about everybody has either had it themselves, has a loved one that has had cancer, or knows somebody who did. My wife had cancer, and fortunately she survived from that. But it's something that affects us all in one way or the other, and we just hate to see it in kids.
Rachel beat it. She was awesome.
Rachel Brinke?
Brinky?
Yeah,
Oh wow, I didn't know
Well,
that.
congratulations to
Yeah,
Rachel.
that's awesome.
Rachel's amazing.
All right, so anybody photographers who want to get involved in this, what they need to do is go to and correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but go to goldhopeweebly.com, and then there's a place on there where they can find out about it. Like I think probably this join thing right here, where they can click on the join thing and submit an application.
And if you're not accepted the first time around, don't get worried about it. It's just we want to offer the absolute best quality to these families. They come looking at the website. Oop, hold on, my other thing started up here. But you're always welcome to reapply.
Awesome.
And anything else that we need to mention?
Sorry. I'm pretending to be Mike with both my screens up here. Just really help us spread the word.
Okay.
We're really working hard to get it underway. I actually am going to meet up with a friend of mine whose son passed away. He heads up braincandy.org, and I'm going to kind of pick his mind about the whole nonprofit thing, which is expensive. We might piggyback onto something else, but really, just give. You've been given a gift, give it to these families.
Yeah.
They really could use it.
And I take it, even if you're this isn't your thing, you may know somebody who it is. Maybe you're not a child photographer, but if you know somebody who is, pass this on to them.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Melissa, thank you for coming in. We're glad we got that hooked up, and we're sorry we weren't able to talk to Morgan, and she's having some bandwidth issues tonight. But we're glad we got this out there.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Melissa.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and we will put the link in our show notes and hopefully send some people your way.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right. Kathleen, are you ready to pick back up where you were? Do you remember where you were?
Yeah, I'll go back to my screen share. Let's see. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes, I am.
Can you see yourself?
Yeah, we see Melissa.
Okay. There's our
We
newborn.
see
So we were
me.
talking about clarity, right? There's going to be times where decreasing your clarity is going to be better for your image, especially with newborns. Decreasing your clarity will give an overall softness to your image. So sometimes I use it to make skin look creamy and soft. Whenever you're using clarity, it's always best to really zoom in so you can kind of see exactly what you're doing with your image. So I've zoomed in on this newborn. You could even get closer by coming up over to the left-hand panel of your navigator and hitting 4:1, which will really zoom you in really nicely. If your clarity, okay, so for example, on this image, if it was on 0, your image would look like this. And if I decrease the clarity a lot, you see how it's just really smoothing out the lines. Now that's being really exaggerated. So I wouldn't
Right.
do it that much, but I'd probably hang out around -10 or -15 at the most. When you really increase your clarity, if you do it too much, you can start seeing haloing in your image. So that's something else to kind of look for to make sure that you're not doing. And the only way that you're really going to see if you're doing it is if you zoom in on your image. Okay.
And,
You got any
and hey,
questions
while you're
about that?
talking, yeah, one of the tips I do all the time. Okay, I'm having an alarm go off on my phone.
Awesome.
One of the things I do all the time, and you said 100%, that is important when you're doing things like that, is
Yeah.
to go 100%. What I do is hit the space bar.
Nope, we lost her.
Oh my gosh.
We lost
Kathleen
Melissa, too.
again. All right. Well, while we're waiting for that,
She's
one
coming
of the
back
things
in.
one of the things I do, and this is when we talked earlier about the P and an X, and I'll talk quickly while we're waiting for Kathleen, as I'm going through images and culling them, and this also goes for what Kathleen was just talking about, looking at it 100%, is, I do the P and X, it flags it to good, X flags it to bad, and moves you to the next image. I hit the space bar, to, what do you call it? I hit the space bar to zoom in 100%, then hit the space bar again to back out. I don't know what's happening there. We're getting some kind of message. Do you do that, Tim? Hit the space bar to zoom in and zoom out?
Yeah, I've done that as well. I mean, I also use the tablet, my Wacom tablet, to zoom in with the little circle.
Zoom in with the little circle?
The slide bar on the Wacom tablet. You got yours. I don't have mine out right now.
Oh yeah. And Doug is talking about the P is for pick. I probably said it wrong. P is for pick. X is for reject. So as you're looking at your images and you're going through them, and Kathleen was not doing more on the culling. She was talking more on the development thing. But on the culling, I just hold my fingers on the P and an X and have a thumb on the space bar. So I'm hitting P to Melissa's coming
To
back
pick.
in? P to pick, and then X to reject. And if I want to look at it a little closer, I hit the space bar again.
Now, do you
to go
have
in.
yours auto advanced when you hit the P and the X?
Hey, Melissa, you can go ahead and drop out. You didn't need to stay in.
Oh, I'm so confused.
Sorry. I don't know what's going on there, but it's okay. I think we covered what we need to there.
Yep, I'm good.
Yep, thank you.
Now, when you use the P and the X, are you using the auto advance?
I am. So there is a spot in Lightroom, and maybe I should share my screen, although I can't do what Kathleen was going to do because I don't have her photos.
It's under Photo Auto Advance.
Yeah, so let me share screen while we're waiting for Kathleen.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry. I have no idea why it keeps doing that.
While we're doing that, let me do one thing while we're waiting, okay?
Okay, cool.
So you said, Tim, it's where photo?
Photo, and then auto advance, about 3/4 of the way down.
Yeah, I don't. Y'all probably can't. No, you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yep.
So photo and then auto advance. You got to make sure that's checked. And if
Mhm.
that's checked, what happens is when you're looking at an image, and I don't know. So let's say, good gosh, I'm looking at my entire collection. That's probably not a good idea. Let me know when you're ready, Kathleen. I'll stop. my
Whenever
little
you're
thing.
ready. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
All right. These are not even my images. But you know, as you're looking at this and you hit a P, it takes you to the next one.
Mhm.
And you hit a P, it takes you to the next one. And you have to have that auto advance set up. And you hit an X, and it'll still take you to the next one. But I don't know, can you see the bottom of the screen where
Yeah, it's
a
grayed
little
out. when
grayed
you hit
out?
the X. Mhm.
Yeah, so you can even see in that view. And then if I want to go back to the grid, I hit G to go
Mhm.
back to grid. And this is in the library module. You're going over the develop module, but in the library module, you can see flag, a flag with an X.
Yeah.
You can barely see that. And then these two haven't gone over yet. But that's that. So let me go ahead and finish screen sharing.
Okay, well, I want to show you something else that has to do with that. So before we move on to saturation and stuff, I'm going to go to the library module and show you guys something real quick that I have found extremely, extremely helpful when you're picking your images. Let's see, who shall I go to? Who should I photograph?
Somebody's asking, what is the tab auto advance? It's under photo. You got to be in the library module under photo, and then underneath that, about 2/3 of the way down, there's something called auto advance. It really helps speed up your culling because you don't have to worry about taking your fingers off the P, the X, and the space bar.
Yeah. All right, so when I start my culling in the library module, I start with just large thumbnails. And can you see over here where I'm hovering?
Yep.
That's your large thumbnails, and then you can change the size of your thumbnails by moving over to the right, and there's a slider here that makes your thumbnails really small or really big. I make them the largest they can, and I look at just my thumbnails, and I go through with the X and the P. This is my first run through for culling. And the reason I do this is because if an image is not interesting as a thumbnail, then it's not going to be interesting when you get it larger either. So my first run through is I go through and I do quick XP, XP, XP. And then once I've hit every single image and looked at it as a thumbnail, you can hit Command Delete, and it will give you an option to delete all of the images that you put an X on. And you can either delete them just out of Lightroom, or you can completely delete them off your desk. I personally completely delete them off my desk because it saves room on my computer, and if I didn't like it as a large thumbnail to begin with, then I'm probably not going to like it later.
Tim, do you
I do
that?
the same exact thing. For Windows, it's Control Backspace. Actually, I just go to the photo drop down and I do the same exact thing. I go through all the pictures and I delete all my rejected and I take them off the disk because you're right. If I don't like it, then I'm never going to like it.
It's exactly it.
I'm a
And
pack
then my
rat. I
next
don't delete
pass-
anything.
You don't?
And you
Oh my
got two
goodness.
copies of everything.
Couldn't do it. My next pass through is like, for example, of this little girl. So I have all these images down here at the bottom where she's wearing the same color top, and she's basically in a very similar pose. So I will highlight all of them and then go back up here next to where you have thumbnail view, then you have full screen view. This XY is a comparison view, and the next one over is called the survey view. I hit the survey view, and then over here where it says filters, I will filter and only have images that are flagged.
Oh, we lost Kathleen again.
Really
So,
heavy.
you know, while we're waiting for her, I just thought of something else. If you have dual monitors like I do, and you saw earlier, you saw 3, I actually have 4, but only 2 of them are connected to the computer I'm doing the editing on. The other 2 are for the broadcast server. What happens with Lightroom is you can also have the image showing up on another monitor, right?
That's what I do. I have the image I'm looking at on a secondary monitor.
So I think this is right. I can't remember if I've done this or not. But if you're doing the P and an X and you've got the large thumbnails like she just did, as it goes to the next thumbnail, isn't it also showing it big on the other screen?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So you can actually have, you know, whatever size thumbnails you want to have, and have it big on your second monitor, and be doing the X and the P.
And then you're getting a really good idea of the picture. I mean, my first run through is looking for the ones with poor facial expressions, out of focus, or something really
Overexposed,
wrong with the,
underexposed.
right.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I'm getting rid of that I didn't get rid of in the camera in the first place.
Yeah, so Katja is saying that she needs a second monitor. Yeah, you definitely. I think that dual monitors, Photoshop. I love dual monitors in Photoshop because I have all my tools over on the right-hand side, and my image on the big monitor, on the main monitor, but all the tools over there. In Lightroom, I don't use the dual monitor all the time, but I do use it quite often. For Photoshop, it's almost a must.
I agree. I tell you, I haven't been in Photoshop in a while. I haven't upgraded to CS6, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to.
And you for dual monitors, you don't. I mean, it doesn't have to be that expensive, depending on what kind of monitors you have. It is good if you got two of the same kind. So if you spend $1,000 on a monitor, you may want to spend another $1,000 on another one. But you don't have to. Mine are not super expensive.
No, I think the one that you're going to actually edit the picture on, like so you're doing in Photoshop, the one that the picture is going to be on has to be the good monitor. The one that's got the menus on it, that does not need to be a good monitor because you're not worried about color quality on that one. You're worried about it on the one that has the picture. And then you have to edit on that. Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Sorry, you guys. So did you guys get through that without me?
Yeah, we kind of talked through, and we were talking about, and you're doing all this from a laptop, right?
Me, no. I'm on my computer. It's just not a wired connection. But I don't know if that has anything to do with it because, Mike, I never cut out this much and we're not having bad weather or anything. I wonder if it's just because I'm trying to do Lightroom at the same time.
Yeah, we can talk offline about that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But what we're talking about, Kathleen, is that let me highlight you so we can have that ready. What we're talking about is, you're showing the thumbnails and how you're going through that with the X and the P.
Yeah.
I sometimes will also, I don't do this all the time, but sometimes I have the image also showing up on my second monitor.
Okay.
So you can do that. There's a way to have that on your second monitor. So even though you're looking
nice.
at the thumbnails, you can have it bigger on your second monitor if you want.
Ooh, there's a reason to have a second monitor right there.
So,
did you guys see when I went to the survey view about how I process of elimination there? Or did I cut out?
You had
You must have been gone.
Okay, I'll go over that real quick because that's helpful too. I'll grab a bunch of the images that look the same, which I do by clicking on one and then holding down the shift button and grabbing a bunch. And if I'm in the survey mode, which is down here next to the thumbnail mode, then it will show me all the images that I'm surveying at the same time. You guys following me so far?
Yes.
Okay, so you've highlighted 6 images.
6 images, right.
Yep.
Also, down here to the bottom left, you have an option to filter your images. I have mine set to only show flagged images.
Bottom right.
Bottom right, sorry, yes. What this does for me is as I'm looking at the images, if I decide one of them is not my favorite, then I can hit the X button and it will automatically remove the flag and at the same time remove it from my survey. So, for example, this image here that I just highlighted, I don't really love her smile here. It's a little bit too forced. So I'm going to hit the X button, and it automatically took it off of my survey because it removed the flag.
Nice.
So that's how I kind of do my process of elimination. All right, I'm going to go back to the Develop module. Let's see. Where are we? Where did I put my pictures? They're on my desktop. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to go to this boat picture so we can talk about saturation. So I'm going back up to the Develop module and switching over, and we're coming back down here to the Presence selection. We've already talked about clarity, and right now we're going to talk about your vibrance and your saturation. Let's talk about saturation first. Technically, saturation is the amount of gray in a picture. So for example, if I to take this slider all the way over to the left, it will completely remove all the saturation from my image, making it what's called a grayscale image because it's showing you all the gray. For our purposes, saturation, we will talk about it as being the richness of the colors because obviously if you go in the opposite direction all the way to the right, it would bring out the richness in every color in the image. It can get kind of crazy looking while we're in there. Vibrance increases the saturation of colors that are not already saturated. So basically, your vibrance is just a more detailed adjustment of your saturation, but it's going to target the colors in your image that aren't completely saturated. And the great thing about vibrance is it will ignore skin tones of your subject, which is generally what you want to do because you don't really want to be increasing saturation on somebody's skin.
I did not know that. Yeah, I did not know that.
So if I pump up the vibrance, it's taking all the colors in the image that aren't normally that saturated and just adjusting those. But if you watch her face, even if I bring it all the way up, her face really isn't changing as much as the other image, parts of the image are, which is really great. Okay, so that's something you can play with.
Chris was asking to repeat something about the vibrance. Basically, you're saying that the vibrance has limited impact on the skin, but it will affect the other items in the image?
Your vibrance increases the saturation of colors that are not already as saturated.
Okay.
And it also ignores your skin tone colors, which is great. Okay, let's talk about tone curve, which is right under your presence box, okay? Let me make sure that I'm on the right thing
now
here.
this is one I don't use too often, so I'm interested to see what you have to say here.
The tone curve panel is used to adjust your contrast. Now, we've already talked about adjusting contrast up under the tone basics panel. So the tone curve panel is just more detailed than just setting your contrast up here with a number. Think of it as setting a number up here is going to adjust your contrast kind of globally over the whole picture. And where the tone curve adjusts the whole picture is just being more detailed. It's allowing you control over the 4 parts that are in your curves. There are 4 parts. They are, so if I'm dragging my, let's go over here. Oop, let me get rid of that. If I go up here, you have your your highlights, your lights, then you have your midtones, and then your shadows. So up here, if I do a contrast bump, I don't have as much control as I do over here in the tone curve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's basically like the histogram too.
Exactly. It's very much like your histogram, but it's not an actual histogram. I'll go over that in a minute. This kind of reminds me of curves in Photoshop. Like if you're going to set an S curve in Photoshop, it would be very similar to messing with your tone curve in Lightroom. There are 2 versions of the tone curve panel that you switch between by coming down here to the point curve icon. Can you guys see where my cursor is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's the closed version, and this is the open version. And when you open it up, it just gives you some slider options once again, so you can adjust just your highlights, just your lights, just your darks, or just your shadows. And see, as I'm moving this, you can see the curve actually moving. Does that make sense? And if I double click on region, it will set them all back to 0. You guys still following me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I keep saying that because I'm afraid I'm going to lose you again. Okay, now before you do anything to your tone curve panel, you're going to see a white straight line. That line represents an unchanged photograph file. It does not represent the actual tone values in this specific image. It is not a histogram. When you move a single point of your curve up, so for example, let's come up here, we're within the highlights. If I click and move that up, then I'm going to be brightening my highlights. If I bring it down, I'm going to be darkening my highlights. That's anywhere on the curve that you go. If you put a point on your tone curve and let it go and you don't like it, you just grab it and pull it all the way down to the right, and it will get rid of it for you. Hold on. Let me zero this back out. Okay. You can also do adjustments down here in the slider, but once again, whatever you do up here with the tone curve is also going to be reflected in the slider and vice versa. So it's just a preference. It gives you options to however you want to use it.
Yeah, and talking of preferences, you were talking before about the highlights, the shadows, the whites and the blacks, and exposure, and all that kind of stuff. Those things are also up in the very top in the histogram. And if you feel like moving your mouse up in the air and sliding those things around inside the histogram, you can do it in there too, rather than doing it down in the little sliders if you want.
See, I've never used that. That's awesome.
So, and that's a preference too, which way you want it to go. So one thing we didn't hit on, and I'll let you get back on. Oh crap, we just lost her again.
It's a painful night for technology.
For Mac technology. So while we're waiting for her, I'll ask you, Tim, this is a question out in chat. Do you have any presets set up for your images as you import them?
As I import them, I have some metadata presets that I use for like my name, location, like for my soccer pictures that I take with the team name and everything. I'll have it set up for that, but nothing for the develop module. More for the library.
And Kathleen, what I was asking you, and I don't think you heard it, was, do you have any as you're importing your photos? Do you do any presets at the import time?
I don't. I thought about setting up one, and that's to do a lens correction, just because I shoot with my 50mm a lot, and sometimes in portraits close up, like the one I'm showing, you can get some distortion. Yeah. But I don't yet. I haven't gotten that far every time where I know that something's going to work on every photo. I think I will at some point get there, but I don't have anything yet. Do you?
Yeah, but it's very minor. It was asked, somebody asked it out in chat, and what I do is I always add a little, I know I'm always going to add some clarity, a little bit of saturation, vibrance, and that may be it. Maybe just those two.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly now. Well, when I had my D2X, I also added a little bit of noise reduction on any photo.
You knew you were going to have to anyway.
Yeah, and I had basically a couple of presets. So if it was a higher ISO, I'd use that. But it would apply these minor things that I knew was going to do at least that to every image.
Yeah. And I've seen some other photographers do the same thing. Like I have a photographer that I've listened to that with every single photo, they put a -15 on clarity. Every single photo, and they're wedding photographers. That doesn't work for me on every photo. Sometimes I want it up and sometimes I want it down. There's another photographer, we're going to get down and talk about adding luminance to your image, which is basically noise reduction. They pump theirs up to 30 or 40. I think that was Sposabella, one of our guests. They pumped that up and they said that they feel like that adds softness to their images. So the neat thing about this is that you can really get a groove for what works for you, especially after you've been using it for a long time.
Well, even if you have those, you don't want to do anything too hard, or normally you don't, anything too hard in a preset on an imported image because you haven't looked at it yet.
That's right.
But even if you do those minor things and then later you find out, whoops, I didn't want to do that, you can always undo it.
Right.
Right. That I was just going to say that's the best thing about Lightroom. It's non-destructive. It doesn't save permanently to the picture, so you can always get back to that original picture whenever you want.
Yeah, it's great. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit more in depth about the tone curve panel. Yep. This is where it gets really interesting. If you close the point curve right here, then up here it gives you channel options. The first one is just RGB, which means that you're obviously controlling all of your channels. Then you have red, green, and blue. You guys following me so far?
Yep.
Okay, so I need to point out the opposite of red is cyan, the opposite of green is magenta, and the opposite of blue is yellow. So you basically have options to control every single color within your image. For example, let's say that I go to the red channel. Since the opposite of red is cyan, if I pull down my midtones, then my image is going to turn greenish blue cyan color. If I pull it up, then you're going to be pushing more of the red tones. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Now that I've created this awkward point, the way that you get rid of it is by grabbing that point and just pulling it all the way off to the side. I obviously didn't grab it right. And it will just bounce it back and then set it back to normal for you.
Cool.
The little shortcuts.
The little shortcuts. Okay, so now these channels are really important in helping us create that hazy effect. We already talked about coming up here under the tone panel and bringing up your shadows. That's point one to creating a hazy effect. Number two is if you want a hazy effect that is strong in a color, this is how you have control over it. I'm going to go back to RGB first, and I'm going right here. It says point curve linear because that's what we have. They've given you a few little presets. They've given you a medium contrast preset, which gives you a medium S curve, a strong contrast preset, which gives you a strong curve. I didn't like either one of those because they were both too strong for me. So what I did is I kind of created my own point curve. This is not how I did it, but I'm showing you how to save your own preset. Let's say that I move this a little bit. Down here under custom, it gives me an option to save, and I can hit save, and a dialog box will come up and give me an option.
Give her an option to save it as it crashes your computer.
We got to get her a wired connection to that laptop, even though I'm not so sure that's what it is.
I don't think it's the internet. But
I think it's Lightroom is really just taxing her.
What we need to know is what kind of RAM she's got in that computer and what else is going on. So, and someone was asking about the noise reduction. So, noise reduction, you know, in Lightroom, especially in Lightroom 4, you can actually, I don't know if you tried, do you have Lightroom 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
In Lightroom 4, you can also do noise reduction with the adjustment brush.
Correct.
So, and I have done noise reduction in a sky, not with the light adjustment brush, but with the, what is that thing called? The
not horizon.
Not the horizon. The thing where you can do.
Yeah, I'm gonna find it now.
I'll show you
tone.
guys how to do that.
Graduated filter.
Graduated filter, yeah.
Sorry, where did I lose you guys? Was I talking about how to save a preset?
You had just pulled it up to save a preset and you crashed then.
Okay. Well, I
Graduated
canceled
tool,
it out because that's how you save your preset, but I've already saved my own. I just created a small contrast because that's what I use.
But
so
you can name it, so you can have a whole bunch, right?
Whatever you want, and I think as many as you want, yeah.
Just got to be able to find them.
You just got to be able to find them. So under point curve, that's what linear would look like. My small contrast gives it a little bit of a boost. That's what I wanted for my images most of all. Okay, so now that I have my RGB channel set with my point curve, you guys still following me?
Mm-hmm.
If I go under any of the colors, let's say blue, for example, and I grab the bottom point that is already on the line. Now this is down in my shadows, right? If I drag it up, then I'm going to start creating a blue hazy effect. Do you guys see that in my image?
I do, yeah.
Isn't that awesome? Now, this is one of those things that you got to play with, and it's not going to work great for every single photo. I have created some presets that do look great on every photo, but it's taken me hours to do it. But it's one of those things that if you can take your shadows up here in the basic panel and really stretch them up, see, that's if I don't have them, it's got more pop to it. If I bring my shadows up, I get more of that hazy effect, and now I've got a blue hazy effect because I've pulled up my blue channel. You guys still following me?
Yeah, and this is the thing. This is one of the things why you did not want to leave Photoshop, because you were looking for how can I recreate this in Lightroom, right?
That's right. This is
Awesome.
exactly it. And the way that I learned how to do it was there was an action that I used all the time in Photoshop, and it was called Coral. It was by oh, I'll have to think about that. But what I did was I ran the action that I loved so much on Photoshop, and then I brought that image into Lightroom, and I did the whole before and after a million times until I tweaked the image so it looked like what I was getting in Photoshop. And then I felt like I could say goodbye to Photoshop, because doing it in here is so much faster, especially now because I've created my own presets for the looks that I like. It's really nice.
Yeah, awesome.
When you click on the point, do you see up in the tone curve box how it's giving you some values up in the top left corner? It
Yeah,
says
I'm sure
0.
on chat you can.
0,
You
and
can.
then-
We can't read it, but I'm sure I can see that there's something there. And if you're in chat, you can barely see it in that little tone curve box or some data at the
Yeah.
upper left-hand corner.
You
Right?
don't really need to see the numbers to get what I'm going to tell you. When you want to get rid of it and you drag it back down, you just want to make sure that you're at 0, 0, 0, 0 again.
Okay.
Okay, so that means you've zeroed it out. So that's a really fun thing to play with. Go into those separate channels, create some fun hazes. Now, if you want to create a haze that is not dependent upon color, right? If you want all of it to globally adjust, come back into your RGB, grab your bottom one again, and pull it straight up to do that haze. Same deal. See how all the shadows in here are basically getting clipped out? I'm doing it really extreme. I wouldn't do it that much. But basically, that's how you can get a hazy image. I've also got another point here that I created on my curve. I can drag that one up because I'm still here in my shadows, and see how it gets that hazy look over the image. But now this one's not dependent upon color.
And I might have missed this, but how did you create all the points?
The points I did by coming down here to my point curve, and I just did a small contrast. That's one that I created on my own. I grabbed their medium contrast is what I did, and then I tweaked it so it was not so defined.
So that's where you said you made your own preset because you thought the two that they had there were too extreme for your taste.
For my taste, it was too extreme, and so I just made my own, and so that's the one that I have. And then so now that I already have all my points, in order to bring out the haze, I can just pull up anything down here in the shadow area, and it creates my haze.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you create your own points?
Yes, absolutely. You can go back to linear, and if you just want to do a normal S-curve, which I'm not great at this, you just grab it, pull it up, grab your center, pull it down, grab your bottom, pull it up, the same way that you would do it in Photoshop. I never can get anything that looks great for me, but I know there's some people that are fantastic at creating S-curves because they know exactly what they want, so that's how you would do it. You can just click right on the tone curve. Back to linear, or like I said before, if you create a point and don't like it, just grab it and pull it down all the way to the right hand side, and it will go back to 0.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
We're well over the hour, but I'll let you keep going if you want to go.
Well, I don't want to keep anybody, so anybody who's out in chat that needs to go, remember that this is going to be recorded, but I will keep going if you want me to.
Sure, this is great. Keep going.
Okay, cool. So the next part of the develop module that we have is HSL, color, and black and white. So a color that you see in a photograph is composed of 3 different components. You have hue, saturation, and luminance, which is why it's called the HSL. So if you click on HSL, it's going to show you hue, saturation, and luminance broken out into little sections. So here's the hue section, saturation section, and then luminance. The panel, no matter which way you look at it, is basically giving you all of the same information. It just depends on your preference on how you want to look at it. The other one looks like this. If you click on color, it separates it out by color. So here's the reds, and here's the hue, saturation, and luminance of your reds, okay? If you do black and white, it automatically converts your images to a black and white, but then you have control over your reds within the black and white, your oranges, and all the colors, which is really nice, okay? I prefer the HSL. I like to mess with my hues, my saturation, and then my luminance. I don't use this for every photograph. If I'm doing a straightforward, clean edit, I usually don't touch this. But especially when you're trying to get that haziness out and trying to do some color toning and split toning onto your image, this is a really nice thing to play with.
Yeah.
So,
do you have to do this sometimes for your newborns when they have too much red in their skin?
If I have too much, okay, so I've learned that if you get your white balance right with newborns, then you're not dealing with red skin as much. I feel like that hat has been removed for me ever since I started getting my white balance correct in camera. If you have some color cast, yeah, this is a great place to mess with it. Yeah, so yeah, I guess to say yes, you can.
It looks like you have a lot of the options and a lot of control here.
There is a lot of control here. So hue, let's talk about hue. That's just another word for color. If you drag the sliders to the left or to the right, so for example, let's take green, since there's a lot of green in this photograph. If I drag it all the way to the right, it's going to change the hue of my greens. All the way to the left, it changes the hue again. It makes it more yellows, okay? This is really great to mess with. If you have those images, I know that we've seen them before or taken them before where you've got a lot of grass and it almost looks fluorescent. This is a great way to manipulate that green fluorescent grass and not make it look so loud.
Okay.
It's great because when you adjusted that, nothing happened to his face at all.
Yeah. It just affected the greens. Now, that can get a little tricky because, as you and I both know, I'm going to switch to a different photograph to represent this. We're going to come to this picture of Weston. Not every color is just one color, okay?
Right.
Let's take his shorts, for example, okay? They look magenta reddish to me. So if I came here to the magenta slider and I just moved the magenta slider, you're not seeing a huge difference in the pants.
Almost nothing,
either
right.
way. Exactly. Because his pants are composed of more than just magenta, right? The way that you mess with that is up here they have a neat little target. Can you guys see my cursor?
Yep.
You click on it, you go into your photo, and then wherever you click, if you drag up or down, see over on the develop module, it's moved the red and the magenta. If I drag down, it goes the opposite way.
Yep. You can I do that sometimes for the sky.
Yes.
And hopefully everybody out in chat got that. In the HSL area, you got this little dot with a line, something above and below.
Target. It looks like a target.
Yeah, a little target. And you can bring it into the sky, and you can drag it up and down to change that. That's that area there. I thought you could also.
In the sky, you know, we've got aqua, we've got blue, you know, so there's values there that if you were just using just the colors, you wouldn't be able to control them as much.
Exactly. So somebody is asking in chat a little bit more information. So if you look at the sky at first, it looked like it was probably blue, but not quite solid blue. So you knew there's some other colors there. As she's moving that around, she can see she's actually got a little bit of red. She's got aqua. She's got blue and a little bit of magenta. And you can see that. Maybe not so well in chat, but you can see that as she's sliding that thing up and down. You click that little target, you click somewhere in your image, and then as you move your mouse up, it adds saturation or hue or whatever you're doing.
Right now we're on hue, so it's changing. Right now the hue changes the actual color, but you're right. If we go to the saturation portion, there's a separate target for saturation, and I can do the same thing. I can drag it up, and it really makes it blue, exactly, or I can drag it down and grayscale out the blue. I mean, look at that. That's an option, right?
I can't say I've ever really used this. That looks great.
Even with pants, I could come down here to the pants. Now I've grayed out his pants. I bring it up, and I can make these really vibrant looking with the saturation.
And Lightroom 3 has, I believe, the same stuff. Somebody's asking it. It has that same thing. I do it in luminance because I do it sometimes in luminance.
Yeah. Now, luminance is one of those things that, like I said, I'm actually going to go to a different picture. And before I move to show you luminance, if you want to zero out everything again, once again, go to saturation, double click. It'll zero everything out. Go to hue, double click. It zeroes everything back out.
Can you do it for luminance, though, on this one?
Yeah. I can do it for luminance on this one, yeah. So luminance is a little different. Luminance is the brightness of your tones.
Yeah.
So every photo has bright and dark parts of their photo, okay? So let's see.
Go up to the sky and drag it down just a little bit.
Drag it down. It deepens everything.
Yeah, so I use that sometimes to deepen the blue in the sky.
Yeah, that's nice. And that's not messing with your saturation. It's just messing with how bright or dark that is. The other picture I wanted to show you with luminance, let me zero this out so I don't forget, is this picture with all the green, because I was talking about those greens, right?
Yeah.
So if I grab my target from luminance, come out here to all the green and bring it down, it just makes it less pronounced.
Yep, you there?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I was afraid we lost you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's luminance and hue and saturation. And once again, you can do all those same adjustments by going under the color module, but it's just set up differently, but you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, and if you totally screw it up, because let's say like when we hit that one thing, it messed with maybe 5 or 6 of the little sliders. Like Kathleen said, you just click on luminance or the word luminance, the word saturation, or word hue, and it snaps them all back to 0 really quick.
Yep.
The thing,
Awesome.
and she's taking her time to kind of go through this, which she's trying to be quick, but also trying to take her time. But once you got this stuff down, you can really fly through editing in Lightroom.
Oh, yeah. It's really great. We're going to go over your split toning next, which you guys are about to love, love, love. The split toning, especially when you're trying to get that hazy look. Okay. So split toning is where you add or change one color to your shadows and a different one to your highlights. This right here was key for me in figuring out how to get that look that I was getting in Photoshop, and I wanted to get it in Lightroom. This was key. So for example, on this picture right here, do you see this red blob up there? That's showing me that my highlights are blown there because I have the J selected. If I hit J again, it'll take that away. So we don't have to look at it. Okay, so split toning, we have highlights and we have shadows separated out. So if I click on this box next to highlights, a little dialog box pops up and I can say, I want my highlights to be more green, look at that, or more blue, or, you know, more cyan or more magenta. You have all these options here. And because I'm way up here in the top of the box, the percentage of the color that I'm putting in is really high. It's like 79%, okay? If you want more of a subtle approach, come down here towards the bottom. See, now I'm down to 14%, okay? So this is where you get those subtle changes, and it took me a long time to kind of mess around and figure out what color I really wanted my highlights to be and what color I really wanted my shadows to be. So whatever you did here in the box that I showed you, you can also do with these sliders, okay? So I have learned that for my highlights, I really like 71, which is kind of more of a creamy tone. And for my saturation, I like to have it at 5. It's a very subtle difference. I want to show you this here. You see this toggle thing that I'm highlighting over?
Yep.
Okay. If I turn that off, it'll take away what I just did to the picture. If I click it, it will show me the change. It'll be more obvious here once I get into my shadows. So my shadows, I like to have, if I'm doing a hazy image, like a purple tone in my shadows. It just adds some moodiness. And I'm staying down here at the bottom, so it's not really like that's too much. I don't want it to change too much. But once again, once you learn what you like, you can just adjust it here with your sliders. So for my shadows, I'm going to go with 286 because I've learned that's what I've liked. And I'm just going to do saturation 10. And once again, I'm going to do the before and after. So that's before and that's after. Can you guys see the change at all? It's subtle.
It's very subtle, yeah. But
it's really just kind of softening everything.
And I love that before and after feature and split and several of the things here, not just that one, where you can go on and off, so you can look at your differences and see, you know, what kind of change you make. Because like there, it's very, very subtle. And you probably had to play with it quite a bit and turn it on and off.
Oh my word, yes. And this is why people, even though if you know how to use your develop module, this is why people still buy other people's presets. Because I can create something and I can tell you how to use the develop module, but unless you know my exact formula, it's not going to look exactly the same way. But the great thing is that you can create your own. It just takes time to do it, you know?
Yep.
So one of the presets I've created, by the way, let me show you how to create a preset. So I've got all these adjustments to this picture at this point. If I come over to the left-hand side, right by presets, there's a little plus button. If I click that plus button, I can name the preset anything I want. I can save it under any folder that I want. And I can tell the computer which settings to remember within this preset.
Yep.
So I don't really ever check white balance when I do presets because my white balance is going to be different from image to image, right? But then go through every single thing. Like, for example, let's say that I only wanted to save this split toning as a preset. I would get rid of everything else and just have checked my split toning.
You could also just click none.
Oh, right. And then
Check
that would
none.
zero everything out and then go to split toning.
Yeah.
And then you hit create and it will save your preset over to the left-hand side. So one of the presets that I like to use that I've created, I call it Smolder. I'm going to click it and that's my smolder preset. If you saw up here now under my HSL, it's adjusted a lot of my hues, a lot of my saturations, and a lot of my luminance. And then one thing that you can do on your keyboard, if you hit the Y button, it will show you a split view before and after.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now you can really see it.
Then you can see the difference. And it's really important to look at your before and afters, or maybe you might overdo it, you know?
So before not too long ago, you were a full Photoshop girl, and using maybe Lightroom to cull your images, something like that. How long did it take you to become this proficient in Lightroom?
You know what? If I was smart, I would have marked my date when I started doing it, but it doesn't feel like it's been more than a month. It still feels very new to me, but I've done a lot of studying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of my own tutorials, and there's some really great stuff. If you guys go to Adobe TV, there's some great free tutorials there that will go even in more depth than what I'm doing today, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Also, if you don't like this split before and after view, come down here. Can you guys see where I'm shaking my mouse? That's the full view. Just click here and it gives you some more options. So you can do before and after, light, right and left, and it will show you the whole image. So this is before my images on the left, and this is after my images on the right. You can switch it so it's top over the bottom. It just gives you some options. And you get that just by hitting your Y key. So when you want to get out of that view, you just hit your Y key again, or you can come back down here and go to the single view, and you're set.
And now, this doesn't apply necessarily to what you're doing here, but like when I'm shooting sports, I might have a whole, or maybe even landscape, a whole bunch of images that are very similar.
Yeah.
And you do all these edits to one, or maybe you just do some basic edits to the first one, then you can copy those edits out to all the ones that are in your little thumbnails down below.
Let me show you how to do that real quick, just for the people who don't know. I'm going to go back to my library.
I thought you did that in Develop module.
Well, I'm going to select a different photo shoot is what I'm going to do.
Okay. I don't mean to get you off track. You can keep going.
No, this is good. It's good for people to know this. There goes my dog. Hold on.
The dog's saying, isn't the show over yet?
Hold on.
One of the ways I get back to, like, if I'm in a Develop module, go ahead,
He's going to wake up my kids.
Oh, we don't want that. When he also just took the computer off.
There we go again.
Tim, one of the ways, so I'm in a Develop module and I want to get back to the one of the things I do to the library thing is I just hit the G key.
Yeah, for grid. That's what I do.
The G key is grid and takes you right back into the grid view, which is the library.
What? Say that again?
If you're in Develop module and you want to get back to the grid view, just hit G. And it takes you
in the library. There are so many shortcuts for Lightroom.
That's awesome. Okay, so can you guys see my screen again?
Yep.
Okay. So
you're getting to be a pro of come in and out of this.
I'm telling you, I know exactly what I'm doing now. I'm going to go back to this little baby that we've kind of been working with the blue cast and blown out images. You guys like this? Okay, so for example, let's say, now how do I get back to the Develop module quickly? Give me the shortcut for that.
Yeah, I don't have that
Do
one.
I hit D?
Yep.
Look at that.
Try it and see.
Develop. Love it. Okay.
Library is the only one that doesn't jump over by hitting L because it brings you somewhere else.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm changing my white balance here because I know it's way off and my exposure is way too bright. So I'm going to bring that down. My contrast, I'm going to bump that up. Okay, so I have created myself a preset which is called 1-2 punch, and it basically gives all of my favorites just for a clean edit, and then I can kind of tweak it per image. Like I said, this image is a little bit bright. Okay, so now let's pretend that I'm completely done editing this image. Let's go ahead and add some pretty haze to it, and
all these names you're looking at here, those are the ones you created.
Those are mine.
Have you bought some too?
I have, and I never used them. It was a waste of money for me. But I will say that buying someone else's presets gave me a starting point sometimes to what I was looking for. So I would take someone else's preset and do it, and I'd be like, I like everything but these 3 things. And then I would adjust those 3 things and then figure out why I liked the other things and then create my own preset.
Do you have a recommendation on like your favorite, a place to look?
I haven't bought that many, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I've only bought from one company, and it was Visco Film. The neat thing about theirs is that it's specific to camera. So I just opened up the presets from Visco Film for the Canon, and then it's supposed to give you a film look to your images. So if I clicked on one of theirs, if you were shooting with a film camera and you used the Fuji Supera 800, then that's what the picture would have looked like.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a great topic for the Facebook group is to, what your favorite presets are.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Definitely. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my normal 1-2 punch edit. And I'm going to lower my exposure. Not that much. That's crazy talk. Okay. Let's pretend this image was exactly the way that I wanted it, which it's not, but let's pretend that it is. All I would have to do is, since I've got a bunch of images here that are all the same, is I can hold down my shift button and then click as far as I want over. And let's say I want all of these images now highlighted to look the same. I just hit sync. And now it's going to say, what do you want to synchronize? Well, I definitely want to synchronize my white balance because I know all these images were taken under the same circumstances, so I want my white balance to be the same, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to have everything checked that I want. The only thing is sometimes like graduated filters can be different from image to image. So you just have to decide what you want, hit synchronize, and it will automatically start changing every single image. You can see down here at the bottom of my screen that white balance changed really quickly because now my images look a lot more warm. Another thing you can do is you can hit that toggle up over here by the sync, and it changes to auto sync. So now if I decide that there's anything on this image that I want to change, and I also want it to change all the other images that are highlighted, I can do that. I can up anything I want to, and now across the board it will do that same adjustment onto every single image that I have highlighted.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If you hit reset down here, it resets the entire panel. Everything that you've adjusted, it takes your image back to the way it came out of your camera. Okay?
Yep.
To turn off auto sync, you just toggle that down. So, all right, what did you hit? You hit G for grid?
Yep.
Stop it. That's awesome. I love that. Okay, where am I? Go back to my desktop. You guys chit chat while I'm finding this. Oh, here we go.
Okay, good. I didn't have a whole lot of chit chat.
Okay.
I've been using all my chit chat every time you jump out.
Which will probably happen in a couple of seconds anyway.
Exactly. I just hit D to go back to our develop module now. I can't see what anyone is saying in chat, so I hope that this is going over well and that people are getting stuff and I'm not going too fast for you.
It is, and I've been trying to, as they come up with stuff, work it in.
Okay, cool. Let's move down. We've talked about split toning. That is so much fun to play with, people. And I might go ahead and make one of my preset settings available to you guys on the Facebook page if you guys want me to.
Oh, I think they would love that, yeah.
To give a starting point, which would be fun. Okay, let's talk about sharpening. So I'm going to move to a different picture. Let's go to this one. Sweet baby in a bowl. Okay, so, sorry, I got a cough. You need to remember that sharpening is done where there is an edge to your photograph. An edge is where there is a change in color or tone. So, for example, a foggy landscape is going to have very little edges. Just like in the top part of this picture where the water is, there's not a lot of edges, okay? A dilapidated barn is going to have a lot of edges. Or if you come down here in the photograph to where the blanket is wrinkled, there's a lot more edges here. So what sharpening does to an edge is it increases the contrast on both sides of the edge. You following me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. So raw files have never been sharpened, right? Because they're raw. Nothing's ever been done to them. So when you bring a raw file, I'm going to double click on sharpening to bring all of my settings back to normal. When you bring a raw file into your Lightroom, your amount of sharpening default is going to be 25 because it's telling you we got to do a little bit of sharpening since nothing's happened, right?
Yep. Oh, So we just lost her. So let's see if she knows about masking. Do you use masking on the sharpening?
I've started using that on it. That's
Yeah,
part of the reason I don't need to go into Photoshop much, because I never was big on layers. So
you know, I used to do most of my sharpening, or I guess at one point I did all of it in Lightroom, in Photoshop. But I never do sharpening now in Lightroom without using the masking. Whoop.
I'm back.
I just tipped off the thing I was going to see if you knew how to do.
Masking.
Dang it, you heard me.
I heard you. And can I tell you, this is the other part of the develop module that I don't do in order. I'm going to explain it in order, and then I'm going to show you how I do it.
Okay.
So RAW files come over with an automatic setting of 25 because it needs some sharpening. JPEG files will come in at 0 because they've already been sharpened in camera, right?
Yep.
Okay. So your sharpening is just that. It's going to increase the contrast on either side of the edge or the line where you have contrast in your image. Your radius, when you change the radius values, it changes the width of that contrast line. Okay?
Yep.
Detail, for portrait work, I usually leave the detail at 0 because if there's like, if you up that detail, let me show you what happens to the picture. I'm going to have to zoom in for you.
Hit the space bar.
Yes, you can hit the space bar. You can also come up here in the navigator and hit, you know, fill or 1:1 or 4:1. You can hit command and the plus sign or the minus sign to zoom in or out. So there's a couple little tricks there. Okay. So if I zoom in really closely and I have my detail all the way to the right at 100%, you know, it's going to sharpen all the detail in your image. Now this baby, since it has, you know, baby smooth skin, not a lot of detail to sharpen, but if I zero it out, it just softens everything. This is probably not the best image for us to be looking at that. But all that to say, be careful with your detail, because if you're doing portrait work, you don't necessarily want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, also, detail also can reduce halos that might appear along edges. So that might be interesting to you, Mike, with your landscape photography.
Absolutely, yep.
Now, oddly enough, if you have a 0 value, then that is suppressing your halos the most. If you take your value up to 100, it has no halo suppression whatsoever. So that's good to know. Okay, you still there?
Yep, we're here.
Okay. Masking varies where the sharpening is done. So basically, when you're at 0, your entire photograph is going to be sharpened, okay? Mm-hmm. If you adjust your masking, it's limiting the parts in your photograph where the sharpening is going to occur. As you increase your masking value, your sharpening is restricted to more of just pronounced edges.
Hold the command key down while you do that.
That's exactly what I was going to show them next. Okay. So the way that I do my sharpening, you have to have a little bit here to get started, is if you hold down Option or Command on a Mac, then I start with masking. And this is me telling the computer what part of my images I want to be sharpened. For my newborns and for basically portraits, I come up just so I can see just the eyes. So once again, once you click down, it's going to take the image to this where you can see exactly what's going to be sharpened.
And only the things that are white are being sharpened.
That's exactly it. My detail, once again, holding down the command, you get the same idea, okay? I keep that at 0 personally for portraits. Radius, still holding down your Option or your Command. You can bring this up, and that is going to change the width of the contrast increase, which is what's going to help you sharpen your image. I personally bring it up till I can kind of see the outline of my portrait. Does that make sense?
Yeah, wait, so are you holding down the command key right now?
Still holding it down, yep.
Okay.
Okay, let go of that. And then if I'm holding my command down when I do sharpening, it takes your image to a black and white, because sometimes color can be distracting when you're sharpening. Mm-hmm. And then you can bring it up to wherever you think it's going to look
right.
I
don't think I've ever done that. That's cool.
I do want to show you something, though. When you're zoomed in, and once again, sharpening is something that you should do zoomed in. When you're adding let's bring my masking down. When you're adding sharpening, you're also introducing noise. Do you see all the noise I just introduced to the image?
Yeah, it was a little bit pixelated just because of the we're having to transmit this over the internet.
Okay, right.
So, but take that into account while we're looking at it.
Yeah.
Not you, but us.
That's why you want to be zoomed in so that, you can get your masking right where you want it. So I'm looking for that crease in the eye. I've got it where I want it. And then I can bring my sharpening up. But in the black and white, since I'm holding down my option button or your command button on your PC, I can see exactly how much grain or noise that I'm introducing into my photo. And you want to try not to do that, right? Mm-hmm. I will say this, for me personally, and I print with White House Custom Color, where I look on the screen and I thought that I've sharpened, when I get them printed, they did not look as sharp as they did on my screen. So this is one of those things that it's very important if you're running a business to go ahead and do a couple sample images, because now I know that in Lightroom, I can be more generous with my sharpening because it's going to look better in print than it did if I didn't.
Okay.
So something to keep in mind.
And
okay.
on a PC is a control key.
I'm sorry. Yeah, control. Thank you for.
I thought I was saying the right Mac thing when I said command key on. And
so it's option on a Mac or control on a PC.
I was wrong when I was talking about the Mac.
We'll get it.
Okay,
straight.
go ahead.
Okay, so after you've sharpened your image, then that's a great time to deal with noise reduction. I'm going to go ahead and zero out my luminance here so we can start from scratch. Now you can see all that grain on the eyeball. Are you still with me?
Yep.
Okay, so luminance noise reduction deals with black and white specks in your image. Color noise reduction deals with pink and green specks in your image. I personally don't really see pink and green specks ever in my pictures. I don't know if it's because of the type of photography that I use. I don't know what would really create pink and green specks. Do you know?
No, and I was wrong. Somebody just corrected me. It's not the control key on the PC, it's the Alt key.
Oh, there you go. Oh, well, you know what? On my Mac, it says Option or Alt, so I can remember. It's Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC. Cool.
Anybody listening?
And then I think it's Command and Control for us.
Okay.
Command on
there
that.
you go.
Got it. Okay.
Got it.
Go ahead.
All right, so to get rid of this noise that you see in the image, the best place to look on your picture for noise is in the shadows. So I'm looking right here at the baby's nostril. You just move your luminance slider up to wherever you start to see the noise start to go down. Now, I suggest being careful with this because I think that images in Lightroom, if you do too much luminance, can start looking very plasticky.
Yeah.
That's my personal preference. I know photographers who automatically set their luminance at 50, but that's not my preference. It's just not the way I like it.
I would not do noise reduction as an auto thing. You really got to be careful with that.
I think it's definitely specific, yes. The detail slider right here under your luminance manages your threshold of your luminance, basically.
You know what I've come to find is that Lightroom really does a really good job of noise reduction. I got Topaz Labs denoise and did a test with it, and did a comparison of that, and I think Noise Ninja in Photoshop and Lightroom, and Lightroom was just as good, if not better, than those things.
That's good.
Which was a problem because I was going to have Topaz come on the show and talk about denoise.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
We're still working on that.
Oh,
go ahead.
We lost Kathleen.
Oh, dang it. But I did a test with my D2X, and D2X produces a ton of noise. So I was had some good noise to test it with.
Well, how old is that camera? That's
the D2X. What is that? 5, 6, 7 years. It's old. So it produces a lot of noise. So looking forward to soccer season this year. Not soccer, swimming.
I was going to say looking forward to. I'm getting near the end of mine.
Swimming season. Kathleen was going over the noise thing, and I mentioned before because I'm more of a landscape photographer and sports, but talking on the landscape, doing noise reduction in Lightroom 4 with either the adjustment brush or the graduated filter. The graduated filter is awesome in a lot of ways because you can do so much stuff. Was Kathleen back?
Yeah, I'm
She's back.
You can do so much with that graduated filter that I would, when you're doing landscape, a lot of times you get noise in the sky.
Yeah.
And I would do that graduated filter with a noise reduction on the sky, and it does such a good job of getting rid of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Doug out in chat saying he has a D2X also. It gets noisy above ISO 400. Yeah, it does. So try shooting a swimming match at ISO 3200. It's just awful.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
Underneath the detail panel is the lens correction panel. It's pretty self-explanatory. Depending upon what lens you shoot with, there can be distortion, chromatic aberration, vignetting. Those are 3 words that you can look up on your own for homework. And this lens panel can help correct all of that, which is really nice. I always set mine to enable the profile corrections, and the great thing is it automatically pulls up the camera that I'm using, the model of the lens that I use, and it just does an automatic adjustment. So I've already done it on this image. If you take it off, you see how it's got vignetting around the edges. You can't really see distortion because I'm, far enough away from my subject, but as soon as I do profile corrections, there you go. And honestly, this is one of the first thing I personally do to my images because it changes the look of the exposure. If you were setting exposure based on this image with all the vignetting around it, and then did your profile correction, then your exposure might look too bright.
It not only did it do that, there's a great deal of distortion that it's dealing with too. Doesn't
it? It's really great. And that's especially important for images, especially like this one. Let me show you what this image looks like without it.
And I think this is, it won't have every image, every lens in there, but Canon, Nikon, I don't know about Sony. Sorry,
Sony's got very poor.
But almost all Canon and Nikon lenses will be in there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Enable it, and there it goes.
Yeah, I can definitely see it.
Yep.
What lens is that?
50 millimeter.
The 50 is having that much distortion?
Oh, yeah. Especially when you get close up like this. It's not really, this is not meant for a close up, head and shoulder portrait lens. That was never its intention. I think you're supposed to use, the 85 or something like that. But I use it all the time, and this profile correction thing is fantastic.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Underneath the lens correction are the last bit of effects that you can apply to your image. This is where you can do vignetting, which is really great. I love the vignetting here. Let me grab a different picture.
Yeah, I like vignetting too. I got to be careful not to do it to every image I produce.
I know. Let's talk about this image with the vignetting. There's none on it right now, okay? If I go to the right, then it's going to introduce white vignetting. If I go to the left, it introduces dark vignetting, okay? I'm going to skip down here. Do you see where it says feather? If I take all the feathering off, then I get an exact oval shape, okay? This is really nice. Exactly. I can see exactly what I'm doing. So right under the amount is my midpoint. I can set exactly where I want my midpoint to be, and I can see it better when I have the feathering off, okay?
Okay.
The roundness, let's say that I don't want it oval and I want it more round of a vignette, I can adjust that as well. And then I can bring my feathering back in to where it looks natural, and it gives you more of that nice spotlight effect. Now, this is personally way too much for me. I would really bring this back, but having the availability of all these sliders helps you to get really spot on with your, vignetting.
Yeah, then, as much as I use vignetting, I've not done that the way you just did it. That's awesome.
Isn't that great? And then the highlights, if you've got highlights on areas that are vignetted, let me go ahead and make it really drastic so you can see what I'm talking about. If I want to bring the highlights back, see how it does that? It brings them back. So I can vignette but not lose my highlights within the vignetting. I don't really play with that too often, but sometimes it's nice to kind of keep those highlights. So I'm going to toggle off and on so you can see before or after. That's before vignetting, and then that's after. Now, the nice thing is that I have come up with a vignette that I like, and I've saved it as a preset. And so the only thing it does is does a vignette for me. And so I can make it really fast. And I could do like 3 or 5 or 10 presets of different vignette styles that I know I like. And so instead of on an image coming over here and adjusting it every time, I can say, ooh, I love my round vignette. That's the one I want to do on this picture, and hit it, and I'm done.
Now, in this case, your image is centered. Can you do a vignetting to one side or another?
That's one thing they don't have that I am really hoping they add with the next version of Lightroom,
So
is to be able to pick your center point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and here's kind of how I've got around that, and it's not, it doesn't work for every image. You got to be careful with it, but I've used a graduated filter to just, let's say I've got somebody on the left side of the image. I've used a graduated filter to do a vignette from the right to the left.
Oh, that's smart. Very cool.
And then if I needed to, I could do another one.
We haven't even talked about that graduated filter and all that, the tools up top, which are so handy. I don't even know if we should do it tonight or if we should just save that for a different night.
We're already at 2 hours, so I think
that's what I was
should.
thinking. I was like, hello.
You're almost at the bottom of the develop module.
I'm done. Well, I mean, the last thing is the camera calibration, which honestly I leave it alone. It's going to detect your camera when it comes in. And so it's going to set everything. But basically, the reason to have this is like a lot of times if you're shooting, okay, so your camera will develop your raw information from the sensor into a JPEG if you're set up in JPEG. And in your camera, you have several options. You've seen it: natural, standard, landscape, vivid, portrait. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so when you open a raw file in Lightroom, you have the ability within this camera calibration to use those settings and apply it to your raw files here. That's basically what it is. So camera neutral, camera landscape. You can mess around with them. They give you different options. It just depends on what you like.
Well, why don't you quickly let's look at the graduated filter then.
Okay, cool.
We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but just because we mentioned it, and really the graduated filter and the adjustment brush.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, here's one where you can do it.
This is a great one. I pulled it just for this. Okay, so if you come back up to the top of the Develop module, you're going to have some tools here, and we can go over each of them a little bit more in depth. We'll start with the graduated filter since that's what we were talking about. And this is this little thing that looks like a rectangle. When you open it up, you can either do a new one or you can edit an old one that you've already done. And on this image, I haven't added any graduated filters yet, so it's not giving me the edit option quite yet. But basically, everything that you have in your basics panel, they've also given the option to use within a graduated filter or an adjustment brush. And the need for these is to be able to do local adjustments to certain parts of your image without globally affecting the whole image. You following me?
Yep.
Okay, so if I grab the graduated filter, let's say like this sky, I'd like to see a little bit more of what was going on there. So I'm going to load my filter up with lowering the exposure, okay? And then I can start from the top of my image and click and then just drag all the way down to right where my horizon line is and try and make that pretty level. And then it's applied that negative exposure just to the top part of this image. The rest of the image has not been affected, which is really great. Yep. But that's not all. If I want to do more than just adjust the exposure, let's say I don't like how far down I brought it, I can bring it back up. Because my little pin here still has a black dot in it, I am still just affecting what is happening on that on that graduated filter. So I can up the contrast in the sky, bring out some more of those clouds if I want to. I can bring down the highlights. I can, bring down the shadows. I can up the clarity if I want to, and I can really up the saturation if I want to. And the only thing it is affecting is right up here in the sky. And then down here, I can toggle on and off. So that's off and that's on, and you can see the adjustment that I've made.
Yep.
Really great.
It does a really good job of graduating that too, so you don't see it once you get rid of those lines. It really blends in really well.
It really does. Let me close it out for you. Once you hit close, then your little dot disappears. But like, for example, this island right here, you don't see any haloing around the island because of the way that the graduated filter graduated the effects all the way down.
Yep.
And you can get really much more in depth with the graduated filter than what I just did. There's some great tutorials out there, and you can reverse your effects. There's a ton of different things you can do. Like Mike was saying, you can do a vignette from one side to the other by using your graduated filter. So that's a really cool tool to play with.
All right.
If you want to toggle, if you want to make changes later, you see how there's no black dot there. You just click on it, give yourself a black dot, and it gives you the option to switch that all up. If you need to do a new graduated filter on the same image, you just hit new, and then you can start it wherever you want it, and then it will basically make a new pin mark for you. So here's my second one. And if you delete it, if you want to get rid of all the effects, you just click on it so there's a black dot there and hit delete, and it will take it away.
Yeah, I love the graduated filter and the adjustment brush. I use some of those quite often. And the thing that's is just amazing is everything you did, including the graduated filter, is non-destructive to the image. You shot that raw file, and all of these adjustments you've done have not damaged that raw file. You can go back. You can go back to that original raw file.
That's right.
And the other, we didn't go over this, and I don't want to go into this much in detail. But let's say you've got. Are you ready? I've been highlighted just on you. I need to bring us all up now.
Yeah, go ahead and bring us up.
Okay. So you don't have video you're sharing.
I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay.
There I
am. Okay, I'm not going to worry about all that for now. We got a little bit of white space down there, but we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But what I was saying is, so let's say you've got images. You may want to do one black and white. You may want to do one colored. You may want to do one with your vignette and one without it. So maybe you want to do one image 4 different ways. So that you can easily do that by creating virtual copies in Lightroom. You just
and then
right click.
You can see all the different ones. And you can also do that by doing screenshots. I mean, there's so many different things we didn't even discuss tonight. So we're going to have to do another one.
I will sometimes have multiple images on a screen, highlight all of them, right-click, say create virtual copies.
Yeah.
It creates, say 10 virtual copies. Of all. Let's say I had 10 images. 10. I convert those 10 to black and white, and then say, none of those work as black and white. Hit delete. All the virtual copies are gone.
Yep.
And they're virtual copies, so they're not like doubling the space on your hard drive.
Yeah. So like we said at the beginning, when you're learning, the learning curve is going to take you some time. But I am telling you, a month later into it, my editing is so much faster. I need to go ahead and time myself as to how quick I can cull and get an image, a whole photo shoot edited out and posted to my gallery, because it's crazy. And I almost kick myself for not learning it sooner.
Well, I'm glad
you talk you into it for a long time.
We did. I'm glad you spent the time with it. And I think it takes that. When I first got Lightroom, I did the trial version. And I think halfway through the trial, I was saying, what on earth? Why do people like this?
Right.
I cannot get my hands around this because it's so different from Photoshop.
It's so different.
But something clicked along the way, and now I just love it. And I still have to go into Photoshop every once in a while. Like you mentioned earlier, the cloning, anything you want to do it later, layers, and some other things are just not there or not as good in Photoshop and Lightroom, so you have to go back out into Photoshop. But it also makes it easy to move it out into Photoshop, do your editing, bring it back into Lightroom. The round trip is not that difficult.
I do think that Lightroom 4, the cloning is more intuitive than 3, and hoping for even more improvements with the upgrades. I wanted to go over cloning tonight. We'll have to do that a different night. But with my process that's really great is that I can do all of the edits on my images, post them, wait to find out which pictures my clients are going to buy, and then only take those images into Photoshop if I absolutely have to do more detailed cloning. So I'm not doing every single image. It's so nice.
That's awesome. And we went a little long tonight, but I think we had a great topic. Kathleen, you did a great job of going over everything.
You're going to have to split this up and get rid of all the times that I disappeared off the screen.
Well, that would take me for
a 45-minute show.
That's going to take me forever to edit, so I'm not going to do that. I don't know what I'll do there, but
in and out.
They're mentioning out in chat that they would love more in Lightroom, maybe even Photoshop also. Cool. And we do have a lot of guests coming up. We do try and book. Tonight was not a scheduled no guest. It just worked out that way. But we do try and book, leave some open dates every now and then, so we can do shows like this, because we want to do some go back to the basics. And not that this was basics. This is good, but we want to go back every once in a while to some things like this instead of having a assigned guest. I don't know how good you'd feel about doing a Photoshop one.
I could probably still do it. It's been a while since I've used it, but
the one you did that one time was awesome. I love that one.
Good. I'm sure I'd have no problem in it. I would just have to do the same kind of studying for Photoshop like I did today for Lightroom.
So we'll do that next week. We have a favorite of Kathleen, and I got to tell you, when I did the pre-show with her, I'm not going to use the L word, because the L word has been I use it on one girl in high school, my wife, and I think my mom, and that's bad that I'm not sure it's my mom. So, but I really liked Tammy. Tammy was, I felt at ease with her, and we could have easily talked for a long time. So Tammy Young is going to be on next week.
I'm so excited to have her. I mean, she really put a fire under me, and for a lot of reasons, for very many reasons, has shaped my personal business the way that it is now because of the advice that she has and the ideas that she has, and she's awesome. So go check out her website, TammyYoungPhotography.com, or TammyYoungPhoto.com, I should say. And then also make sure you make the show next week, because we're going to be talking about her senior setup and pricing and rates, and we're going to get really in depth with her. She's going to be awesome.
Tim, it should be an easy show for me and you, because I think between Kathleen and
you won't
and Tammy,
word an edgewise, I promise.
We won't get to say anything.
Okay. I'm very talkative as it is.
Yeah.
So again, we'll go ahead and wrap up. But if you haven't signed up for the tablet, you just have a little bit more to go, and then we're going to be giving that thing away. So make sure you get that done. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, do that, because that's the only place you can do the monthly contest. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go ahead and wrap that up. Thanks everybody for coming out.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for sticking with us.
We'll see y'all next week.
See
Good night.
Everyone.